Welcome to Community Conversations with State Attorney Bain, your talk show for insights on the criminal justice system, community issues, and public safety in Orange and Osceola counties. Join State Attorney Andrew Bain as he dives into the issues that matter most to you, keeping it real every step of the way.
Welcome everybody to Community Conversations with State Attorney Bain. I am mobile again. As many of you would call earlier episodes, usually I'm in my office either downtown or downtown Orlando or in downtown Kissimmee. But today we are in the middle of the beginning of starting Domestic Violence Awareness Month. And so usually I'm purpled out, but I ran out of purple today. So you're getting the normal blue from State Attorney Bain for this episode. But this is one of my passions and favorite times of the year because we get to talk a lot about a very important issue that is so prevalent in our community. And a lot of people think about domestic violence in a way that's only thinking about, physical harm. That somebody, they're beating somebody, somebody's getting hurt or abused in that manner. But there's so many other different types of domestic violence, whether it's financial domestic violence, whether it's emotional and psychological domestic violence. Domestic violence where people are threatened to be harmed, like pets are threatened to be harmed. And there's so many different things that go along with that that makes it really hard to get this under control. But I think with great partners, like one of them that we're going to talk to today, and great leadership in our community, both on the local level with law enforcement and local government, and with legislation, we can combat a lot of the dangers that happen when it comes to domestic violence. So last year when I came into office, there was a really big problem, especially with domestic violence homicides in Orange County. And so, many of those cases involve intimate partners, and this is always an issue going forward that we continue to have to combat and go after. And so, this is something that is, again, passion of mine, something that is important to me. And so, one of the things I did when I started back in August was by October separate out a standalone domestic violence unit. And one of the guests you'll hear from today is my chief from our domestic violence unit, Christina Mills, and she's getting ready to get on board. And so we are, in the throes of making major changes. So there were a lot of legislative changes that happened when it came surrounding domestic violence. One, we increased trackers when it came to penalties for putting illegal trackers on people's vehicles or cars or persons or property. We made lethality questionnaires. So if you're not familiar with the lethality factors, it is a risk assessment tool that is, if done correctly with an informed consent manner, allows for some really great predictions as to the level of danger a victim may be or survivor may be in when reporting an incident of domestic violence. And so that's why when I was a judge, we spent a lot of time especially I did initial appearances talking to victims that showed up. When I reviewed the paperwork, when it came to domestic violence cases, is identifying those lethality factors and to adjust bond conditions and release conditions based on those factors. One of those factors being firearms or like dangerous weapons being in the home where a domestic violence incident occurred. So those are always, so when that happens, and that's why I always ordered to remove those firearms from the home, because the number of homicides that are, I think it's some crazy number, like 700% or something, like some crazy number that is likely to happen because of that firearm being in the home. What you're also going to hear from, we're going to talk with Ms. Mills in a little bit. We're going to talk about her passion around strangulation. So strangulation is another one of those things. So other words, so in a locale or a colloquialism, being choked out is a very dangerous situation when it comes to domestic violence, especially domestic violence homicides, because it's an act that is directly contributed to, that passion, and people can control themselves, and then when they may not have started out with the idea that they're going to kill this person, or you're just going to harm them, you then end up seriously injuring that person because of lack of oxygen to the brain, blood clot, strokes, all types of things that go along with that danger. And actually, right before we started the show, we're hot off the presses. Our misdemeanor domestic violence unit just secured a guilty verdict in a domestic violence battery case down in Osceola. So I'm super proud of the work that we've continued to do in this area surrounding domestic violence, and what we're going to do for it in the future when it comes to that issue. And we will continue to do trainings, continue to do work, to continue to speak out in the community, continue to encourage people to report instances of domestic violence, and to make sure that we are keeping our citizens safe from further harm. And so that is a big, huge task because it requires so many partners, both from the nonprofit sector, from the NGO sector, from the government side, both that's the city, local, county, state, sometimes federal. So we enter into a new partnership with our federal partners to prosecute people that have domestic violence convictions or have final injunctions that possess guns, because that's a federal offense for those people to own firearms. Because again, talking about those lethality factors when we're talking about having firearms in the home when it comes to domestic violence cases, and so all those things require a lot of hands-on deck to make sure things happen. So if you talk to one of our shelter partners, and that's from Harbor House here in Orange County, they're going to talk about in the future, Family Justice Center, where we're both another passion of mine, human trafficking victims, domestic violence victims, and sometimes victims of other violent crime can go to receive all the services that are available to them in their locale, which would be Orange County, with all the service providers under one place and one roof, being able to help and move that survivor or victim from a place of danger to a place of safety and onto a place of healing. And that's the mode and the theme that we're going for in this Domestic Violence Awareness Month in October. And so another thing that happened, I want to quickly just run through as relates to we have a homelessness bill that just came into effect back in October, October 1, that was yesterday. It is another big lift that's going to happen for our community. And because of the law that was passed does not directly criminalize homelessness. But if the locale, again, that's the municipality or the county, does not have a bed available for a homeless or unsheltered individual, and they allow that person to camp or sleep in public. And so that is, can vary from many different things, from sleeping on the sidewalk to we have other public property that people encamp on that have structures on them, some makeshift shelters and shanties where they've been living for a significant amount of time in some of those other areas. And so do we then remove those people? They arrest them? Do they refuse to leave? It's a really big issue that we're going to have to come up with. And so we're going to have to really talk about providing beds, providing proper transitional housing to get people from being homeless or unsheltered to being sheltered and onto a productive and prosperous community and life. And so that is the goal that we're going to shoot forward to, and we're going to make happen. And so with the help of many of our other community partners, because we cannot do this alone. There's no problem in either our criminal justice system or our society that can be solved by only one person. It requires a community of people to make that a reality. And I think we have the tools, especially here in Central Florida, to make that a reality. Both Orange and Osceola County is going to take some time. There's going to be some bumps. There's going to be some road and some kind of problems going on that make it a little bumpy. But I think if we stay consistent and consistent pressure on the issue, we can get to a point where we are in a good place. We're not going to solve all the issues. We're not going to get every issue in the whole world solved, but we will be able to get to a place where we can really make a change and make a difference, and then decriminalize or stop criminalizing being unsheltered or homeless. And so it's a big task again, but I think again with the vision that a lot of the leaders that we've started to come up with, we will be successful in the long term in making that a reality, and that's both reducing the cost on the jail and reducing other costs on our medical and other centers because of somebody being unsheltered. And so we're going to do a whole show probably about that soon. And I'll bring on some my other providers when it comes to homelessness, because again, I have a lot of passions, and that is one that is near and dear to my heart. And I kind of got deep into that passion back in 2014 when I became the president of Orange and Osceola. And that's a nonprofit that provides identification documents to indigent people. And so they can open bank accounts, they can vote, they can get services and things that require government official IDs. And so that took me into going out into those encampments, going out and servicing people out in some of the places where some people they're listening on the sound of my voice have never been. Don't even know that they exist back in some of these like the little bushes and woods. But people live there, and you'll be surprised to know that a lot of them work. A lot of them have like real jobs. They just don't make enough money to be able to afford the cost of living. And so, or they have other criminal justice problems, whether it's related to violent crime or other things that may be an issue for them to finding proper shelter. And so, it's again, problem we can solve. We have the answers. We have the people. We just have to get to work to making sure that it's going to be accomplished. And to one of my employees that loves to work, that loves to get after it, and very passionate about her division and bureau is Miss Christina Mills. And you're going to talk to the people, tell them who you are, what you do, what I make you do, what I don't make you do, all of those things.
All right. Well, first of all, he doesn't make me do anything. So not against my will, at least. So my name is Christina Mills. I am the Bureau Chief of the Domestic Violence and Human Trafficking Unit for Orange and Osceola counties for the Ninth Circuit of Florida. So that basically means that I supervise all of our misdemeanor and felony domestic violence attorneys, as well as our human trafficking attorney, our human trafficking unit as well. So that's everything from a misdemeanor battery or simple stalking or misdemeanor assault up until aggravated assault with a deadly weapon, shooting cases, attempted murders, and some of the other more violent crimes as well. So basically my job is to train those attorneys, or work with those attorneys, also oversee our paralegals in the investigations of those cases, and working with our victim services director, Erin McCulley, and our victim advocates to serve all of those victims and with safety plans, other resources and needs, and to make sure that we are ensuring the safety of the victims and survivors in our community, as well as holding the offenders accountable in the appropriate ways.
Well, tell people about, I want to talk to them about the differences in like what we do at the office. So, and what makes your unit, particular and special when it comes to, basically, well, I was a blood and guts prosecutor when I was at the office. So I did, random shootings and, gangs and drug trafficking and attempted murders and all kinds of things like that. So tell them what the difference is in like kind of the regular line people and kind of specialized unit that you have in domestic violence.
Absolutely. So, like I said, I supervise for domestic violence, both the misdemeanor and felony unit. And so that's because there are so many broad levels of domestic violence and ways that it can be perpetrated. So that means that it's a specialized unit, which is separate from what we call the rest of the felony line, which is the more general crimes, and the rest of county court, which is the more general petty thefts, drug crimes, for misdemeanors as well. My specialized unit, their cases are only domestic violence cases, which means that they have a violent crime victim in every single one of their cases, right? As opposed to many of the cases that may be on the felony line or that are in county court, the victim may be the state of Florida, or it may be a large retail organization. Not that the state of Florida and retail organizations are not victims, but at the same time, these are also violent crimes as well. And crimes that affect not just the listed victim in the case, but also many times other family members and their children in their homes as well. So the prosecutors that are in my unit, they have to do individual intakes with each of with the majority of the victims and that are listed in all of our cases. Whereas on the line and in county court, we have a general intake unit because of the volume of the cases that we have. And many larger jurisdictions that are our size and larger have similar intake units as well. And that intake unit is structured with intake attorneys that are dedicated to only handling the literal intake of the cases, getting them from the police agencies, requesting all the evidence and case packages, talking to the victims, contacting the witnesses, and working up those cases to make filing decisions. And then those intake cases would go to the what we call the line attorneys, who actually go to court every day, argue the motions, and file motions, conduct all of the hearings and trials. And so it's two separate units that would handle intake versus the litigation and trial work. However, in domestic violence, our attorneys, we have what's called linear prosecution, which means all of our attorneys, they handle those cases from the beginning, because we believe that it's really important for that to build a rapport with the victim, because they already had gone through so much distrust, so much betrayal. They have to tell their story numerous times already to other people when they have to, seek other resources to family members or to the police, et cetera. And so it's important to have one person handling their case from start to finish, from intake and understanding the case and getting all of those details from the inception of when we first received the case through when we are negotiating with defense counsel to see if we can, resolve the case via a plea offer of some sort, and also through preparing for trial and sentencing. So those attorneys have to do everything from start to finish. So it is a lot of training to, at multiple skill levels. The skill level of, being able to be people persons and talk to victims and relate to people, not because we can never relate to somebody who has a victim who has experienced violence. Even if we have, for those of us who may have experienced violence ourselves, every victim's story and journey and their feelings are different. And so we're never going to say, I understand what you're going through or anything of that sort. That's never going to happen. But what we do try to do is try to train them to be able to understand people's perspectives, where they're coming from, what's important to them, what makes them feel unsafe, what is threatening to them. And really, you have to really spend more time talking to some of these victims, because the statistics have shown for years that the average victim of domestic violence doesn't report their crime or their incidents of violence to the police or to anybody sometimes until at least the seventh incident. Right? So 6 times they've already gone through some act of physical violence or stalking or something of that sort before they ever even speak up and tell anybody. And so it's important that we have to go back and hear all of that, because that context is super important in terms of how we handle the filing of the case, what evidence that we may need from this incident or prior incidents to be able to prove our allegations in court, and to be able to get the right and appropriate sentence for this offender, this victim, this family, because the offenders and abusers are not strangers to these people. They're their husbands, they are boyfriends. Even if they're broken up, they are the father of their children. Sometimes it could be their mother, it could be their father, their sibling, and there are people who are going to be stuck in their life in some way or another, many more times than not, for the rest of their lives, because you can't divorce your cousin, and you can't divorce your mom, or your brother. And there's just so many moving pieces in domestic violence that we have to factor into. So that's why it is a specialized unit, and we really select specialized prosecutors and train them on specialized skills to be able to work with these cases.
So talk a little about, when I had to do some domestic violence, there is this level of frustration though that comes with trying to deal with these cases because you see the danger as the prosecutor, but communicating that to the victim and helping them understand that you are in danger sometimes becomes an issue. So how do we, how are you training them to kind of overcome that? And, kind of you talk to people about, that may be in a situation that, they think that this is normal, that this behavior that's abusive is normal, whether that's mental, financial, whether it's, physical, that's a normal behavior. They've accepted that. So kind of, how do you break that cycle in that person?
Yeah. So it starts with, in terms of, for our perspective as prosecutors working with the victims to get there, it starts with, again, the training of the prosecutors, right? And so it starts with even the selection of who you choose to be in the unit. You have to select. I have to select people that are, and State Attorney Bain, that I'm picky sometimes about what put in my unit, but for a reason, because I need people who start with empathy, right? Who start with being open to and believing their victims, right? And that's not taking, everything that a victim says or a witness says to us as, as Bible true, because there are occasional times that people will stretch or manipulate the truth, but that is a very, very small percentage. The majority of the people who will call the police, because they are in actual danger, are true victims of domestic violence, whether or not they're really ready to accept that label and that position in their lives, right? But once you start with, attorneys that are empathetic, that are open to believing, then it is also then just training them in terms of not just me standing in front of them and talking to them, on a whiteboard or via PowerPoints. That's some of it, but much of it is also like bringing in survivors, and a lot of our survivor leaders as well that are in the community and working, who are people who are no longer victims, but now we call victors or survivors who have come out of their, not only like physically left their relationship, but also they have done the work emotionally and mentally to, really heal. And now they are reaching back, to help other victims who are still stuck in that cycle of violence. And so we do speak with a lot of our survivors, leaders, and some other survivors in our community. And I try to have them come in or, have conversations with the attorneys so that they just really get to understand the perspective and hear more and learn about the perspective of what, different people are going through, when they are in this type of situation, some of the challenges and barriers to them realizing what's going on in their relationship or in their family, and also challenges to being able to leave and separate themselves. And then from there, it takes listening, right? You have to just listen to that survivor and listen to that victim and understand, there are these documents that we will often get from usually the defense bar, but, that has the victim sign them, but they're called declinations of prosecution or non-prosecution affidavits, right? And it's just a standard form that a victim may sign that says they don't want to go forward with pressing the charges. However, in the state of Florida, we're required to evaluate the cases in domestic violence cases to determine whether or not we can go forward, even regardless of whether or not the victim wants to cooperate. And so often I tell my attorneys all the time, whenever you get a declaration of prosecution, that doesn't mean that your case is over by any means. And that doesn't mean that you should stop contacting your victim. That means absolutely in that moment, pick up the phone, call your victim, reach out. And the question is not, do you want to testify? That's irrelevant. The question is, why? Why don't you want to cooperate with this case? I'm just curious. I'm just trying to understand, right? And when we ask that question and really are able to understand and try to listen and hear from and see things from their perspective and understand how they're trying to balance, all of the challenges in their lives. And sometimes they're making choices and saying with their abuser is the lesser of two evils, right? And it may seem like that to them. And so why? Is it because you believe that this person, or not believe, but that that your partner is bipolar schizophrenic, or that they just were in one, we had one victim one time that her abuser they were in a very functional relationship until he got hit by a huge truck on the road, like a semi truck. And, and, and ended up getting addicted to the painkillers and had to go through rehab. And that's when his personality really changed. And she really clung to, like, I can help him, but he was being abusive to her in that, in the process of him trying to be and manipulative, but a lot of it was driven by addiction. And so sometimes they're stuck, and their concern is, I don't want this person to go to jail. They just need help. Right. Especially when it's the first time, or like it's, the abuse is just starting, or they feel like it only started because of this unforeseeable incident or trigger in their lives that then caused them some instability, loss of jobs, etc. Sometimes the victims are financially dependent, or they need, assistance with childcare, or they're like, he's an excellent father, and we need to hear those things and balance those things. Because like I said, rehabilitation is, our goal in the criminal system is not just locking everybody up for every time someone commits a crime, right? There are many people that do need to be, jail or prison time because they have exhausted all the options. We've given them diversion, we've given them probation, we've given them all of the treatment programs, and they've done it over and over, completed it, and they still continue to reoffend and escalate. And those type of people, yes, maybe, we are looking more at a jail and prison sentence, but there are many people who really just need a chance at structured, forced rehabilitation. And unfortunately, the criminal justice system is one of the only ways that we can force someone with a mental health or addiction issue, force an adult to actually complete and comply with a full treatment plan by making it a condition of their probation or of their pretrial diversion. And so sometimes explaining to victims that there are other options, non-incarcerative options, that still allow us to, have a little bit of tabs and supervision over the defendant and their abuser, while also, giving them treatment, weekly treatment, and sometimes more than twice a week or monthly treatment. Many times they are willing to cooperate because what they really want is a functional family member, somebody that they can co-parent with, even from a distance, because that child is not just until they're 18. Your child is your child forever, and you're always going to want to spend time. And so it's important that we really do focus on rehabilitation when we are talking with our victims about what the options are in the criminal system, and in the way that we structure our plea offers and sentences as well, because a 364 maximum sentence on a 364 days in jail, a maximum sentence on a misdemeanor case is not going to cure anyone from abuse issues. And a year later, they're going to be back terrorizing that family again. So when we're able to kind of just listen to the victims, explain to them those options, and really understand like what are the issues that need, remedying in their family, many times we are able to get some sort of more cooperation, or them to trust us and trust this process a little bit more. It's an imperfect process, but we do our best.
So, all right. So we got a few more minutes with you. So in 5 minutes or less, I need you to talk to the people about the change in the law when it comes to domestic, to strangulation, and why is that so important to what you do and what our office does when it comes to domestic violence, especially.
Yeah, so I wanted to talk about strangulation because we've had battery by strangulation statutes on the books for a while now, probably about 20 years or so, about 15 years or so. And the strangulation laws were developed because specifically the statute was really open and available for victims of domestic violence to make strangulation a felony. Victims of dating or domestic violence relationships to make it a felony, as opposed to a misdemeanor battery, which is punishable by a maximum of 1 year in jail, or attempted murder, which is often a second or first degree felony, but it is much harder to prove at that level as well. Basically, the Florida legislature and many legislatures, nationwide, decided to make strangulation and target that form of abuse and that form of battery, and specifically because of the links and the connectivity to victims of strangulation, even what we call non-fatal strangulation, meaning that they survived the strangulation, and domestic violence. There was found to be a very high correlation in the domestic violence population, as well as a lot of lethality as well. There was a high level of domestic violence victims disproportionately to other areas, types of victims that were dying from strangulation. It's a very personal crime. Also, strangulation can often require many believe that it requires medical testimony for us to be able to prove, but it does not always do that. We don't always need that to be able to prove it. The strangulation statutes were expanded last year so that even victims who are not domestic violence victims can also be victims of strangulation and then be able to have their offenders charged with a third-degree felony. And I think that that's important because even though the strangulation law has been on the books for almost like over 15 years, the resources for law enforcement to be able to investigate strangulation on scene and the tools in terms of like the assessment cards have been out there, similar to the domestic violence supplemental reports that have like checklists and information and questions that officers should ask the victims to kind of build up these cases. They've been out there, but the training just hasn't been widespread enough. But I do think that broadening this crime to other victims as well is really going to push law enforcement and prosecutors' offices to really finally give this, disseminate this information, disseminate this training and these tools on a wider spread level. So that's something that our office is absolutely going to be working on. I've already been working on it for the past year. That I've been in the office with this office for 2 years. So I already started working on it this past year a lot with our attorneys, and we're going to be branching out with law enforcement to kind of partner and hopefully fire rescue and some other community partners to be able to really address these strangulation cases so that we can get more just outcomes on these cases.
All right. That's the idea. We're trying to get better outcomes, trying to get better results for our victims. And again, everything we do at the office, as many people hear me say, is community safety driven. So, what you do, what you're doing is community safety in mind, and you're not gonna have no problems with State Attorney Bain as long as you're following the law in the process. That is the goal. So thank you, Ms. Mills, for joining us. And I'll see you back at the office here in a little while.
All right. See you. Thank you, sir.
All right. And on to our guest of the hour and to our good friend from Stand Up Survivor. And so a lot of people hear about, Harbor House is our big organization, right? They're our certified shelter, and they get all the bells and whistles and things like that. But I just want to let everybody know in our community that there are other people in our community that are doing great work in this space. That are supporting victims. You just don't have one option. You have many options of places where you can go. And we're here to talk to Lisa about her organization and Stand Up Survivor. And welcome to the radio show. And good to see you again for the second time today, but this time virtually. But because reason I didn't go into why I'm remote is because we had a luncheon today with Harbor House. They had a Purple Door luncheon, which they have it every year. It's a fundraiser for them to get resources to continue to service victims at the shelter and the animals they have at the shelter and the kids. And last year, I think I was there planting a garden for butterflies and all kinds of things like that. Well, some of there. So for all those kind of things that happen at the shelter, that is something that that is done today for that organization. But there are other organizations that come in to partner and join, and which is one of those is Stand Up Survivor. So welcome, Ms. Lisa. How are you?
Thank you so much, Attorney Bain. I'm wonderful. Thank you. How are you?
I'm blessed, man. Right now, I'm trying to take it day by day and make sure that we're trying to do everything we can at the office to do our job, our part in when it comes to keeping our community safe. And so, but talk to the people about Stand Up Survivor. Like, tell them about what is this organization that you guys have put together and been successful in what you've been doing. So talk to them a little about what you do.
Will do. First of all, thank you for the opportunity to share. I'm super excited. I just want to say thank you, first of all, because as I listened in the first 30 minutes of everything that your office is doing, as a survivor myself, my heart is so full to know that you guys are recognizing the need on so many different angles and have filled in the gaps where gaps were before. And so I just want to first of all say thank you for that. And, you know, Christina, I'm a huge fan. She knows I love working with her. And her passion for this work is so obvious, it seeps out of her pores. And I think one of the key things she said is she leads with empathy. And everything that she does throughout your office is seats in that. And so first, from a survivor standpoint, I want to say thank you for seeing us, for hearing us, and recognizing that we need the support. So I'm actually, a branch off the tree of Harbor House. I was assigned an advocate over 13 years ago when I was leaving my abusive marriage. I escaped with my 2 children who were 2 and 3 at the time. And I was given an advocate from Stand Up. I was given an advocate from Harbor House, who's now our clinical director at Stand Up Survivor. I was that person who didn't know where to go. I had no education. I had nothing except for my children. And I was being abused in all the different forms that you can think of. And so I realized that when I escaped and finally was able, with the support of my advocate, to get back on my feet, I didn't really see anybody who looked like me, number one. I didn't see a woman of color who had escaped and got her life together. I just didn't see it. So for me, it was important to be that person here in our community in Central Florida, because I recognized that when I thought I had nothing and I had to live in that life forever, there was life outside of that. And that's the life that I decided to create for myself, fight for myself. And then I could also be that face and fight for other survivors as well. So Stand Up Survivor is going on year 10. Our offices are located in, yes, man, I'm so excited about it. It's unbelievable that it started with brokenness. I left in the middle of the night with just my children in the backseat of a car. And that's how I had to start my life with no degree, no education, nothing. And now I can turn around and say that I'm able to support the same community that I escaped in. And so we're going on year 10 now, and we help survivors with all different facets. It started with making sure that, because, growing up in a minority family, kind of what happens in the house stays in the house. And I wanted to be the loud voice to say, absolutely not. Domestic violence is killing us. And so our office is located in downtown Orlando. We offer support in Spanish, English, and Portuguese, case management, advocacy, lethality assessment, safety plans, all of the different things that survivors need to escape. And we look at all the different facets of domestic violence, from physical, emotional, psychological, financial, all of the things. And one of the big things we like to do is we like to go to court and sit with survivors. When I was going through, I went to court by myself, and it was terrible. And I said I would never allow another survivor within our power or that went through our organization to do that, because it's a very bewildering situation. So those are some of the things that we do. We educate, we equip, and we empower survivors. I was in an abusive marriage for 10 years, and I didn't even know the word abuse. I never knew that what I was experiencing was abuse. So I truly believe that if we educate people on what it looks like, we can empower them to get out and get to safety.
Oh, so what does that mean for somebody that calls or looks you guys up online and comes into contact with you? Can you just walk them through what's available to them from that first step into obviously you got to do it with people from my office and law enforcement, and sometimes we have to be sheltered, and got to move your kids to different schools, and healthcare and all these other things kind of go into like when you're trying to make a safety plan, especially, and when you're trying to start over, kind of tell them what that sounds like, what it looks like.
So I would like to say it's not a one size fits all. So every survivor is different. It's not a blanket answer for everyone. And so one of the things we love to do is sit with the survivor wherever they are in their journey, right? So they'll call our hotline, reach us on social media, through our website, send an email. We get a lot of referrals. Your office sends us people. The other agencies send us people. We kind of do this whole thing. We're located in some of the NCF offices here in Central Florida as well. And so when we get a referral, first of all, we sit down with the client. And oftentimes a lot of people that we hire here are survivors of domestic violence, because I truly believe that we are able to help others like no other, because we have sat in that seat before. And so we lead with that compassion. And the first thing we do is we assess individually what it is that they need. One of the things, some survivors are not ready to leave, Attorney Bain. They're just not. I was a person who left 12 times before. And so how do you address a survivor in that situation? I always use the word survivor because I feel like if you live to see another day, whether you're in this situation or not, you survived. And so we walk with them. So whether it's trying to escape and getting to a shelter or a transitional home, whether it's relocating, whether it's going to another state, whether it's relocating your children in school, finding a job, opening a bank account. There's so many little things that we can sometimes overlook and dismiss with the survivor, but survivors need you to hold their hand. They don't need you to point and say, hey, call this person, call that person. They need you to go with them to file a restraining order. They need you to go with them to look for houses. They need you to go with them to do all the things, because for so long we've been crippled and robbed of our independence and self-sufficiency. And so we take the time to give that back to them. Whether they need counseling, we do virtual counseling or face-to-face counseling. Case management. My advocate helped me fill out a resume, helped me go back to school. Basic things that you would think at that age I knew how to do, but I was so distorted with the abuse. I really needed someone to hold my hand and walk me through. And so we make sure, I told my advocate, I want to be you and 10 times better, because the way you helped change and save my life, I want to do that for others. And so we've been able to do that for thousands of survivors. And we tell survivors, you don't have to be ready to leave, but when you are, we'll be there. So we'll work with them, whether they're in this situation, whether they're ready to leave. And we have survivors who've been out for 10 years, are not functioning at any level. And so we're here to walk them through that process to get their life back as well.
And so I guess one of the things that that's important for me, and I try to make this something that's important for my attorneys at the office, is exactly like you said. Start with the empathy, like that you have to make sure that they're seen, our victims are seen, and then that they're heard, and that has to be the first step in whatever we're deciding to do. And so that will get you in hot water with me. If I get information that that did not happen, either myself or somebody from my executive team will be visiting you. But it's something that I think is so important. And I guess from your perspective, I know why it's important to me, but from your perspective, why is that important for victims to have that empathy, to have that feeling that they're being seen and heard?
Yeah, well, because in an abusive relationship, we have no voice. Nothing that we want, think, decide, anything that we want, it doesn't matter. We fight for everything, to be seen, to be heard, to be believed. Oftentimes, we don't even believe that we're, like Christina said, we're in an abusive relationship ourselves. Like, you can't be talking about my husband, my partner. They love me. We have a family. So learning to be able to know that I deserve to be heard. I have a voice. What happened to me is not okay. So to sit with someone from the State's Attorney's Office, and they heard me, they're listening to me, they're asking follow-up questions, they're calling me back. For the first time ever, you're like, somebody actually heard me. They care about me. They believe me, because we don't even believe ourselves, right? And even when we do, when I call and I tell somebody, they don't believe me because this person is so nice or so kind. And so I think it's really important. And Christina hit the nail on the head when she said, we call them back. We'll call them and ask why. Why don't you want to press charges? So many survivors, there's so many reasons. We're afraid. They're the breadwinner. They said that they'll change. Ask the question, because sometimes we don't have the strength to say, I really want to press charges, but I'm afraid. Knowing that even if we don't press charges, they are going to continue to abuse us. So following up with that is so important.
Yeah. So again, like one of my positions, like I said, when I was an Orange County judge, I got to see this a lot going on. Because in 2021, I was the initial appearance judge for an entire year at the 33rd jail in Orange County, and it still amazes me. I remember, as you know, this is a story from when I was a prosecutor, and so I was covering initial appearances because somebody was sick, and I had a victim come in. Like, things like straight from the hospital. Like, she was in a sling, like black eye, and she's sitting there telling me about how nothing happened, all these things. And I was sitting there like this can't be real. And I was a young prosecutor at that time, and so I wasn't that experienced in this space. And I was looking at the judge, and they were looking at me, and I'm like, Judge, I would say no to no contact because. Yeah, I don't care if they're here. I think they were here on vacation or something. I'm like, no, I can't with good conscience let this person walk out the door. And then I had another time when it was like Christmas. I had another victim, kind of similar thing, straight from the hospital. And this time I was a judge. I was just like, like she's talking about, well, the kids don't want to have toys. I'm thinking in my mind, I'm like, the kids may not have you if you keep continuing this on. So you're worried about the kids having gifts for Christmas. They may not have a mom. And so talk to the people about like kind of that struggle that occurs, especially with our survivors, and that literally you could be sitting there, all those things could be happening to you. And these are outward injuries and things that are going on, not things talking about it's internal injuries. And talks about like the struggle how that takes place and how that occurs.
Yeah, I mean, it's a real life struggle. It's hard out here. It's extremely expensive even to live here in Central Florida. So you think about if I press charges against my abuser, number one, they're eventually going to get out and they're coming for me. They're not coming for you. They're coming for me. Yeah, so he's a breadwinner. So if he doesn't work anymore, we're going to get evicted. So I have to think of the two of the lesser evils of what can I do, right? And then I also say no one knows their abuser like the victim themselves. So we can say, oh my God, you could just press charges and go like, you don't understand what's going to happen when I have to go back home to this person. And so the risk of leaving has to be better than the risk of staying. And I feel like that's our call as advocates in the community. How can we make it better for them to leave than easier for them to stay? If we make it look good on this side, they may have the strength and the power and the fortitude to give up those Christmas gifts, to give up the electricity, to give up going to a shelter for a period of time, to know that their future is better for that. But it's a real issue. It's a real concern. And for some, it's just not worth it. It's our job, I believe, as an advocate, to make life on the other side of what they're going through better than what they're living through.
So let's talk about the community. So talk to me about what do you think the community should be doing to aid in combating this issue, especially surrounding domestic violence. So talk to them about, well, how do you see that playing out and how it should go?
Yeah, open our eyes. It's happening everywhere. And from the highest office to the lowest, it's going on all around us. And stop staying silent. It doesn't matter who the abuser is. It should not matter who the abuser is. They deserve the same exact punishment. But we have to recognize that safety has to be a priority. See, open your ears. And if they're not ready to leave, offer some sense of support to them so they know it would be worth it. So October is Domestic Violence Awareness Month, but it's really Breast Cancer Awareness Month. Everyone knows that everything is pink. But in my opinion, of course, as an advocate survivor, it should be pink and purple. Why? And there's also a close relationship between the breast cancer and domestic violence. That's a topic for another day. But we can't eliminate. It's important to recognize both because survivors are already hidden, right? You can't see the pain most of the time for us on the outside, but it exists. So allow the community, really, organizations, companies, officers, this should be a big deal because what it does is say, oh, they see us, they recognize us. I can talk to my supervisor, my HR person about domestic violence, and then have a resource. I talk to faith leaders, community organizations, businesses. Do you have something in place to support a survivor who comes to you and tells you that they're being abused? Those things like that have to be put into place.
Right. So it's about education. I hear you
Absolutely.
saying,
Mhm.
and I hear you saying it's about making plans for intervention.
Yes, safely.
All right. Safe interventions. So everybody talks about, what I do on the criminal side, and they also confuse what I do on the criminal side with the civil side of things when it comes to domestic violence. So talk to people a little bit about, the what we call restraining orders, we call temporary injunctions or permanent injunctions, and that process of someone called stay away orders that are put in place, kind of similarly based on the same factors, the same lethality factors. So, how can they get the resources? I know I talked to Madam Clerk Russell. She has a great team down there in Orange County. So does Madam Clerk Soto in Osceola County with Help Now and them being available inside the courthouse in Osceola County. Talk to the people about what does that mean and kind of how can they get help outside of, just coming to people at the courthouse like us.
Yeah, well, so for survivors, restraining orders are really important. And I think over time, they've been minimized as just a piece of paper. They're definitely a piece of paper. That's a fact. But they're a powerful piece of paper that we need. Oftentimes, we're afraid to do it because of one reason or the other. We just had a survivor go downtown this week. All the evidence with one of our advocates, and they were just granted a restraining order, which was so exciting for them because they were so afraid to go, and realizing things like this matter, making sure that you follow through and report what's happening to you. There's going to be sometimes your restraining order is not going to be approved. That's a fact, right? But there are times when it is going to be, and make sure you gather the evidence to do so. And I want to tell survivors, it's not just a piece of paper. It can be a life-saving piece of paper that can protect you and those you love in the places that you visit. So it's really important because survivors often think, oh, that can't protect me, but it has a protection factor that we should definitely push for survivors of domestic violence.
So Madam Clerk Russell was talking. We had a press conference yesterday, and she was talking about one of her initiatives, which is the Hope Card, and which I thought was a very cool thing that was passed by the legislature, because now instead of carrying your your restraining order and whatever other supporting certified documents you may have, that the clerk will be able to issue you a card outlining that information, and that's something you can provide to law enforcement if again your abuser or whoever is trying to violate that order. And so talks about the importance of that new law for our survivor victims.
I love that. I thought that was so huge. It was such a great, because who's carrying around this piece of paper? Oh, I left it in the Buffalo. I don't have it. We're already in a state of panic. So what they did was they created an easier way for us to say, look, this is like my power card. This is my hope card to say, I have it on me. This is my protection. And it gives us a sense of empowerment that has been stripped away from us for so long in that relationship. So having that card gives the survivor, when I heard that, I just rejoiced. I celebrated because I realized this was another step up. This was another level of giving survivors their power back. And it's a card and it's our power. And I love it.
So it's a power card. So I enjoyed it. And so one of the things that I'm always looking forward is opportunities like that to simplify things. And so, because we spend a lot of time, I believe, in the court, especially in the legal system, making things complicated. I mean, I try to imagine, again, like I said, being a survivor or being a victim of a crime, or especially violent crime, especially, and all the things that kind of come along with that, from housing, I can't tell people about a number of victims I have become homeless because of violent crime. And not just, domestic violence is another layer to it, because a lot of times, not only it's a systemic issue, it becomes a family systemic issue. Because then now you have, like, usually involving somebody's mom or the aunt or the sister or brother, or somebody else is involved in this whole thing, and then you got kids, and I mean, it's this whole ordeal. And so, I guess where else do you see places where, especially in what you do, that we can try to make it simpler for people to to assess and to get the help they need?
I think one of the biggest issues, the number one reason for homelessness among women is domestic violence. And so the woman, oftentimes, statistically speaking, is the one who has to flee with the children. But where are you fleeing to? You go to a shelter for only a certain length of time. We need resources to share. Yes, I know you'll be here for 6 weeks, but after the 6 weeks, we can move you into permanent housing. It's a journey. It's a process, not just for domestic violence victims, but homelessness. We get it's an issue, but the need is so great. I feel like we really need to cushion that for them, to let them leave, to say, hey, it's better to leave than it is to stay. Because a lot of the times that they stay is because we haven't given them a different option, right? And so long-term housing, funding for a length of time, first and last month's rent, electricity, things that would give them that self-sufficiency. Recently, a few years ago, actually, Mayor Demings did like a child care grant. So we're able to give child care to survivors of domestic violence, because we say go work, but how are they going to do that for children? So implementing little things that allow you to allow the survivor to become self-sufficient. So I think that providing financial resources is the number one reason they stay, but could also be the number one reason that they leave. Yeah. Providing those.
That's all we have. Yeah, I think so. I think we have a lot of great partners, like you said, like with the county, especially the school systems. There are a lot of, I think, opportunities that we can exploit in, trying to make that a reality, whether that's retraining for job training through places like Career Source or Orange County Technical or Osceola County Technical or Valencia College. They have opportunities for certificates and things like that. And I'm looking to hopefully maybe talk to one of them about, copying what they do for human trafficking victims. So if you're a victim of human trafficking, then you get that free scholarship for Valencia. I think that, they should mirror some of that, some kind of partial scholarship or something like that for domestic violence victims for the same reasons, because, they find themselves in similar places, at least economically, a lot of times trying to leave a domestic violence situation or trying to escape your trafficker. That's why those two units are together in my office, my human trafficking unit and my domestic violence unit, because we end up providing a lot of the same type of resources.
That's awesome. That would be an awesome funding for them. When I was with my ex-husband, I wasn't allowed to work. I wasn't allowed to go to work, and I wasn't allowed to go to school. So because of that, it stumped my education. How can I get a job? So providing a scholarship for domestic violence survivors would be amazing. I hope they say yes.
I hope they yes too. I make a lot of big asks. I guess I don't Maybe because of my size, a lot of people tell me yes sometimes, but they don't tell me no. At least maybe it's maybe not now, but I'll keep asking until we can, get something to get some resource that we can use and help. So that's I'm persistent in that nature.
That's right.
But all right. So tell the people how they can get in contact with Stand Up Survivor.
Stand Up Survivor, you can find us on all the social media accounts. Our website is standupsurvivor.org, and our office is located in downtown Orlando, right off of Bumby. So we'd love to see you, support you, and be there along this journey with you.
All right, and I appreciate you coming on the show. Thank you for indulging me and sharing your experience and sharing your story of being a survivor. And it's always empowering and makes it worth it doing what I do every single day when I have survivors that are doing well after something really tragic happened to them. So thank you for coming on and sharing with us.
Thank you so much for having me. Thank you.
All right, thank you. All right. So we have amazing, again, I love the place where we live. I love being a part of our community here in Orange and Osceola County. It's something that is, because we have people like Miss Lisa that do such great work. All right. So let's talk about great work. On Saturday from 9:30 to 12:30, if you're looking to start a business, if you started a business but you don't know kind of how to grow your business, if you have a kid that wants to start a business and wants to look at opportunities to figure out how to get that done, on Saturday at the National Entrepreneurship Center, and that's at 3201 East Colonial Drive in Suite 820 in Orlando, Florida. So it's right next to the Planet Fitness in the back of the Fashion Square Mall. We will be there hosting a financial empowerment workshop with the National Entrepreneurship Center. Again, because one of the underlying things that drive crime and drive things in our community that we don't want to see is economics. And you just heard about that when it came to domestic violence, because again, financial domestic violence is just as bad as sometimes physical domestic violence. You can't work, you can't go to school, you can't better yourself, you can't do all these different things, and you're trapped and oppressed by those facts. It's not something that's used to uplift you or tell you that, show you that they love you. It's something that's being used to keep you downtrodden. So if you are you want to be part of this class, you want to be part of this workshop, please go on to our Thriving Family Series, Eventbrite, and you will have an opportunity to sign up. You can also call 407-420-4848 and get more information. Again, if you have a business, you want to start a business, if you want to get financial literacy, if you want to learn about all the free FREE resources that we have to provide, especially in our locality, especially in Orange and Osceola County, this is a National Entrepreneurship Center, and they have all those resources that are there that can help you make sure that you're going to have all the things you need to make that a reality. So, I always want to close it out, give you some motivation, get you something going through the day, and get you on to the next availability. There's always going to be, somebody pushing. If somebody's going to be pressing, if somebody's going to try to keep you down, there's always going to be somebody trying to undermine the things that God has planned for you. There's always going to be times where people are going to want to try to take away from the gifts that you have been given. But I'm going to tell you, they can't do it. Not if you keep working. Not if you keep doing the right thing. If you are trying to help people, if you're trying to continue to do the right thing, eventually all those people, all that stuff will pass away. All the weapons that are formed against you will not prosper. You will continue to thrive, even in the face of things where people are trying to hold you down. And so that is what you have to continue to do every single day, is continue to do good work for the right reasons. You continue to try to help people, again, for the right reasons. My dad, my mom, they always tell me, even right now when things are kind of hard, especially for my mom right now, we are she told me to go and continue to do the right thing, continue to work for the people, because you need to go do what God has set out for you to do, which was to help people and to do the right thing. And you got to continue to do that. And so everything that we do in our office is designed for that. It's designed to help. It's designed to help our victims. It's designed to keep you safe. And so, my very simple rules is I just heard me tell Christina at the office, did you follow the law? Did you do the right thing to make sure that our community stays safe? And that is the most important thing for us in this community. And so with that, I'm thankful for you joining us here on Community Conversations, and I will see you all next week.
You've been listening to Community Conversations with State Attorney Bain. Join us again next Wednesday from 2 to 3 p.m. for another episode. Looking for real talk on the criminal justice system and how we can work together to make our communities safer? Tune into Community Conversations with State Attorney Bain every Wednesday from 2 to 3 p.m. Join State Attorney Andrew Bain as he interviews community leaders and activists, diving into the topics that matter most in Orange and Osceola counties. Get insights, stay informed, and be part of the conversation.